Welcome back. You're tuned into Startup Central, and it's time for the next guest who's joining us. Now, Karnataka, the new IT policy has rolled out, and the 50,000 rupees of perks will be given out for firms that is moving talent beyond Bengaluru. Now, this aims at distributing talent to other parts of Karnataka like Mysuru, Mangaluru, Hubli-Dharwad, Kalaburagi and Shivamogga. And on the back of that, the government will be incentivizing companies who are willing to move talent from Bengaluru to these places. Now, to weigh in on this, we are joined by Harish Bijur, who's the brand guru, who's now joining us. Hi, Harish. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Harish, firstly, the Karnataka government has announced a new IT policy that includes relocation fees of 50,000 rupees to firms to move people, to other towns across the state. How will this incentivize companies to move people out of this IT hub? And how have the companies really reacted to this?
Firstly, this policy, you need to get into the fine print of it. Because, it's not only this 50,000, but there are N numbers of other incentives which are going to be offered to people who want to move their businesses out into these terrains. And the reality of it is that Karnataka has a lopsided development. And this is traditional. It goes back decades and decades. North Karnataka is relatively, at a different level of development, whereas South Karnataka got developed. And Bengaluru, the capital of Karnataka, became the magnet city. Now, the idea seems to be to develop each one of these other centers. Mysuru has already got a bit of IT. Mangaluru has, so has Kalaburagi and Shivamogga. And if you really look at Hubli-Dharwad, that's always been a reasonably an industrial belt for a long period of time. Now it is a question of saying that we've got good businesses in Bengaluru, and Bengaluru cannot take so much of business. So let's kind of divide it across these other centers. I think this is a brilliant piece of strategy. And thanks to Priyank Kharge and his moves, I do believe it will come to roost.
Right. Also, Harish, over 400 of the Fortune 500 companies have operations in Bengaluru. The move is to clearly deconcentrate this and accelerate growth beyond Bengaluru to the cities that you mentioned, Mysuru or Mangaluru, Hubli-Dharwad, and so on. But is there enough infra to support this kind of talent exodus and this kind of growth?
That is the moot point. Bengaluru itself did not have enough infra for a long, long period of time. In came Infosys as one of the big ones, the first ones, and around Infosys fell into place infra. So if you look at what has happened to Bengaluru, I mean, we have become the 5th largest unicorn cluster, and that is really big. Out of the 122 unicorns in India, 53 of them come out of Bengaluru. Out of the total number of unicorns that we have, Bengaluru leads with 39. So we're really talking about this ecosystem falling into place. So the idea seems to be let business happen, and around it, the ecosystem will develop. Good or bad, I don't know, because the ideal way of doing it would be to develop the ecosystem along with, and the infrastructure along with, private sector moves into different cities. So rentals, for instance, rentals across all these 4 other, clusters that we are talking about, apart from Bengaluru, are going to be far cheaper than Bengaluru. Bengaluru itself is considered to be, rentals in Bengaluru, office rentals are considered to be about 1/3 of what you get in Beijing across China. Therefore, but Bengaluru is expensive, as you know. A lot of people who live in Bengaluru know that. So imagine at half the price of that, you get a lifestyle which is hopefully in the future going to be a similar lifestyle as you get in Bengaluru.
So, Harish, what will be the plan of action then for companies? Because, it's there, with this, on one hand, they have this incentive, but there are also infra costs involved. Should they want to shift their employees or hire in those regions as well? So it's a dual thing. It's a dichotomy that's happening. You're being incentivized, but there's also cost involved in creating that sort of an infrastructure.
Absolutely. I think we live in a choice economy. And it's extremely important that employees must be given the choice. Please note that many of the employees who work in Bengaluru today don't necessarily come from Bengaluru because Bengaluru is too small for that. We have attracted people from literally every state in the country and most certainly from different parts of Karnataka itself. So who knows if you're able to offer a person from Mangaluru the ability to go back home and earn the same salary and do the same kind of work at half the cost without the traffic of Bengaluru, with the great Mangaluru food, which I love personally. Can you imagine? It could be a no brainer. But the point is, it needs to be done technically because only announcing a policy is not enough. It's extremely important to put together an ecosystem which actually approaches every single IT company within Karnataka at this point of time, within Bengaluru at this point of time, including those who want to come to Bengaluru, like the GCC ecosystem. There's just no reason why the GCC ecosystem must happen only in Bengaluru. And Bengaluru has 40% of India's GCC capability. Now, this 40% is likely to be doubled. Now, when you're doubling it, it's the right thing to do would be to offer the GCCs the ability to go to any of these other 4 clusters. So the key idea is decongest Bengaluru. And I like it because I've personally been asking for a strategy to demagnetize Bengaluru. Demagnetize Bengaluru and magnetize outside hubs within Karnataka so that, over a period of time, you can talk about Karnataka the way we talk about Bengaluru. Of course, without the traffic and without infra issues.
All right, point taken, Harish, and thank you so much for taking the time out joining us. We'll let you go on that note. But moving on to a mega ET Now exclusive, the Labour Secretary Vandana Gurnani lays bare the context and the backdrop of the major labour code overhaul, explains why this was much needed now and talks about how this will bring about a transformational shift. Here's an excerpt. Let's take a look.
So see the code, the provisions are very clear that a social security fund would be set up. In this fund, the contribution from the aggregators, which is 1 to 2% of their turnover, subject to a maximum of 5% of the payout to the workers, would be deposited. And from this fund, schemes would be framed, which would ensure that the gig and platform workers get social security, whether it is pension or insurance. There would be a social security board that will be set up, which will be, as we have in labour, most mechanisms are tripartite. This would also be a tripartite mechanism with representation of both employers and the gig and platform workers, which would overall monitor and oversee the implementation of these initiatives. The workers would register on eShram portal. They're already registering, but these numbers would now, with the formulation of the board and the fund and the scheme, this will go up. And they would get the benefits of pension, etc., through an Aadhaar-linked DBT mechanism. So this is how this entire mechanism would work.
So we have discussed this provision with the industry as well, especially aggregators. Are they agree on this provision?
Yes, in fact, aggregators are quite on board. From our discussion, aggregators were actually looking forward more to a national framework and a national governance mechanism because they work across states. So instead of different states having different mechanisms, aggregators were more in favor of a national framework. Also from the perspective of a gig and platform worker, it works very well because when they move across states, their social security becomes portable. It is not that if they move from state A to B that they lose their social security. Especially pension is a long-term social security. It needs to be portable, and therefore this national mechanism will be a win-win situation for both aggregators as well as the workers.
Moving on, meanwhile, the gig workers also get recognized for the first time as the centre rolls out the labour laws for them. My colleague Snehi Shah is joining us to tell us a list of new laws and how will it impact the financials of the platform companies. Let's take a look.
Well, yes, so let's first understand what the news is. Online food delivery, e-commerce and quick commerce companies like your Amazon, Flipkart, Swiggy, Zepto, Zomato, they will now have to pay for the social benefits of India's 1 million and more gig and platform workers. So first, understanding some numbers, the gig worker economy right now is at 10 million gig workers, which is projected to grow to 23.5 million by 2029 to 2030. This is according to the Press Information Bureau. So the new labour code, let's understand what that is. Gig work, platform work and aggregators have been defined clearly for the first time under this labour code, which was not there earlier. Aggregators must now contribute 1 to 2% of their annual turnover, capped at 5% for of the amount paid or payable to gig and platform workers in terms of social security and other benefits. Now remember, this was never specified in the previous law, so that is a big update coming in terms of what this new labor code has in store for gig workers. Aadhaar-linked universal account number will make welfare benefits easy to access for these gig workers, fully portable and available across state regardless of any migration that happens internally. So now what this means is gig and platform workers will be formally recognized under the law for the first time, and this includes everybody like delivery agents, ride-hailing agents, service platform staff, freelancers and others as well. Under Code on Social Security 2020, all workers including gig and platform workers will get social security coverage. They will also be getting PF, ESIC and insurance, and aggregators must contribute a dedicated fund with financial insurance, health protection, disability support and old age support as well, none of which was specified or existed in the previous law. So in terms of this is obviously going to affect the top line of the companies between 1 and 5% to the extent that they allot a separate fund for the social security benefit.
All right, with that, it's curtains down on this edition of Startup Central. I take your leave. Thank you so much for tuning in.